Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This morning's learning is sponsored by Rochelle Diamond and family. Memory of Chaim Diamond, Chaim ben Avram ben Harav Avram Mordechai Zichron Livracha, and by Susan and Rabbi Saul Kass to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Yortzeit of Rabbi Kass's mother, Rivka Rachel Basi Cheskel Zichron Livracha. Thank you very much to both families. Chapter 35, verse 34. So we're talking about the unique, Moshe is explaining to the Jewish people the unique task of Bezalel, the unique talents of Bezalel. And now in verse 34, Moshe says, and God placed in the heart of Bezalel to teach, who he and his assistant, Eliyav ben Achisamach from the tribe of Dan. There's just a quick Orach Chaim over here that I just think is interesting. What does it mean God put it in his heart to teach? What is that? Just what do the words mean exactly? Orach Chaim and Pasuk Lamed Dalet. Uloros l'sambli bo perush. L'tzad sheyesh chachamim rabim shetei chachmasam b'libam levad. Shelo yedu l'lamda. There are plenty of people who are brilliant who have no idea how to teach their knowledge to other people. Right? It's not enough to know how to do it. I guess as a former teacher, this one speaks to me. That the Orach Chaim says that it's not only that the pasuk is saying it's not only that Bezalel had the ability to do these things, God also granted Bezalel the ability to understand how to explain to others how to do these things, and that's a whole different skill. Okay, there is a really interesting Kli Yakar on this this pasuk. It's really sort of referencing something a little bit later, but we'll just mention it. We'll get to the pasuk soon enough. We're told that the Jewish people donated more than was necessary, and Moshe had to stop them from donating. It's a little bit interesting. Why do we need to know that? In other words, wouldn't we have done okay if we just said they got everything they needed? And is there a deeper significance to Moshe telling them to stop? It just seems to be a very, very logistical thing. And what time was it in the morning when Moshe told them to stop? And like, okay, the point is they made the donations. That's the point. So it's a really interesting Kli Yakar. And God willing, we're going to see another approach or two to this question a little bit later. But Kli Yakar and Pasuk Lamed Daled, in mine, it's the second paragraph of the Kli Yakar. It begins with the words "uchadei lihidamos." It's like the 15th line or so of the Kli Yakar. Uchadei lihidamos mikol v'chol binyan hamishkan el binyan ha'olam. God wanted it to be that the construction of the Mishkan would be comparable to the construction of the world, because the Mishkan is this like central core component of what the world was going to be about now. Siva Moshe lahachriz. Ish v'isha yasu od malacha. Moshe, God told Moshe to announce that people shouldn't do anything more for the Mishkan. We're done. V'chol kach lama. Why is that necessary? V'chiyasu aveira shayim v'yim yosem rechdei atzorech. Would it have been sinful if people brought more than was necessary? Okay, whatever. We don't need any more. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much. God tells Moshe, tell them that they shouldn't bring any more. Is that the worst thing in the world if they do bring more? Elfi Sharon Moshe Shetzir Binyan Zeh Hutavnis Binyan Ha'olam B'chlalo. So Moshe understood that the format of this building is supposed to parallel in some way the building of the world. V'Amar Razal Kishabara Kadosh Baruch Hu Olam Hayam Marchiv V'Holech Ad Shegar Bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Amar Lo Olam Odai. Really famous Gemara. There's a famous idea that connects this to the name of Hashem, Shakai Shin Daled Yud. That when God was creating the world, the world was like gradually expanding until God actively told the world to stop expanding. And obviously that has deep symbolism and significance. I don't think we're going to get into that now, but that's a famous idea in the context of the creation of the world, that God had to actively tell the world to stop expanding. Kach, when Moshe saw that the project was expanding beyond the needs, Goar Bohem, Moshe screamed at them, Lamor, to say, Al Yasu Od Malacha. They shouldn't do anything more. Kikach asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'yitziras olamo, because that's what God did when He created the world. So that's a very interesting idea from Kli Yakar. So Kli Yakar says the significance of this experience that Moshe actually told them to stop. It's like God telling the world to stop expanding. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, we're going to go on now to chapter 36, verse 3. So Moshe had invited the people to make donations. Moshe has installed Bezalel and Eliyav to work on the construction. And now in chapter 36, verse 3, the Torah kind of tells us what the routine was. Vayakhel Moshe, and Bezalel and Eliyav would take from before Moshe, or their workers would take from before Moshe, all of the donations which the Jewish people brought, and the people kept on coming every day, bringing more. Okay, seems to be a very practical pasuk. It's just an interesting Ramban over here that kind of gives us a little bit of the logistics. Ramban and pasuk Gimel. Vayikhel Moshe. Hine biyom echad heviu kol hanadav hazos el oel moed shu shel Moshe. So on a given day, everybody brought their stuff. V'achacham lakhu bo bayom milfanav u'b'macharas ba'ashkama. So that day, the craftspeople would come and collect from Moshe the different donations. V'chein b'sheni heviu elav od el alo nedava v'utziva lahabioso el ha'umnim. So then that was fine for day one, but then day two there was a whole new bundle that showed up at his door. More donations. So then the craftspeople had to come and take those. As we referenced before, until the craftspeople ultimately said, gosh, we don't need any more. We have more than enough. So first of all, the Ramban is interested in a very technical question. In Pekudei, there's going to be somewhat of an accounting of everything that was donated. So the Ramban says, and what happened to the excess? Why is that not mentioned in Pekudei? Because we said we're going to read in the pasuk that they brought extra. So what happened to it? So why isn't it mentioned in Pekudei? Ulai hayamunach ba'oel l'chazik bas bedek mishkan. So first of all, the first thing the Ramban says is it was not a large amount. In other words, it would have been a large amount had Moshe not stopped it. But when they realized there was more than they needed, it was not significantly more. So it's not really worth mentioning. And then he says maybe they kept it there to if there was any repairs needed for the Mishkan, it could be used for repairs of the Mishkan. It's good to have some materials on hand. That's possible. Perhaps there were some extra vessels that could be constructed from these materials. The Hiskir Akasov Marbim Ha'am Lohavi. Remember, we asked before, why does it have to say the Torah? Why does the Torah have to say they brought too much? This is a praise of the people. Normally when there are solicitations, people will bring, people won't bring, but it's not so common that people exceed the estimated needs. Ulefoyer hachachamim b'nei manusam, and to bring great glory to the craftspeople in their reliability, because we're in a government town, everybody, and lahavdil alfei avdalos, it's always possible that if there are excesses that are not net needed, they will disappear and not be accounted for. So A, it shows the generosity of the people. B, it shows the absolute honesty of the people dealing with all these materials. Could you imagine? They're working hard. They're seeing these gorgeous things, and there's no need for it. There's too much. Presumably, they're not getting paid for their work. They came back to Moshe and said, yeah, there's too much. We don't need any more. They brought it back, or sent it wherever he told them to send it to. V'gam hanagid alem meshubach bazeh shehevir kol b'machan elamanam kein lo chayfetz b'kaspam And by the way, says the Ramban, it says something nice about Moshe Rabbeinu too, because would it be crazy for Moshe Rabbeinu to say, I think this excess is commission. I'm the fundraiser. I'm the one who inspired everybody to bring. I'm working long hours. Let me keep this stuff. So the people were generous. The craftspeople didn't take it for themselves, and Moshe didn't take it for himself. And that's very much worthy of note. It shows not only were people generous and working hard, but they were also living to the appropriate ethical code, which is nice to hear. Okay, so that's what the Ramban says on this pasuk. Let's see, actually, the pasuk, verse 5. Vayomru al Moshe lemor. The craftspeople said to Moshe, Marbim ha'am lahavi. The people are bringing too much. Midei avodah la'hamlacha asher tzivu Hashem lasos osad. Where they're bringing us more than we need for the work. Okay, let's see the sforno on pasuk hey. La'hamlacha asher tzivu Hashem lasos osad. Hine nidvas ha'am hi yoser mimashet tzarich losam la'hamlacha. They're telling Moshe that the donations of the people are more than what's needed. Shetziva Hashem lasos osad b'lvad. Sforno was just making a point that the nature of the instruction for these donations was a very specific amount, a very exact amount. The goal is to not have less than that amount, but the goal also is to not have more than that amount. Whatever Hashem said about the Mishnah was an absolute exactitude. Lo ki inyan bibinyan shlomo v'hordus. This is just an interesting thing, an interesting distinction. Sforno says there was no such problem in the two temples. There, people should bring whatever they bring, and if there ends up being extra, there'll be plenty. We'll put it in the treasury. It'll work. It'll help in this way and that way. But the Mishkan was a different model. The Mishkan was more, whether it be the mobile nature of it all, whether it be that they were sort of living with God in a more direct way, whatever it is. But it's just an interesting distinction by the Sforno. This issue of having to have the exact amount was unique to the Mishkan and not so for the temples. An interesting thing. Okay, let's go on now to verse 8. So all of the wise-hearted people did the Mishkan. They made the special curtains for the Mishkan, and now the pasuk goes on to list off various things. Fine, very nice. They made the curtains, great. Now look at verse 11 for a second. What's the first word in verse 11? Vayas, and he made the hooks. What's the first word in verse 13? Vayas, and he made. 14, Vayas, and he made. Are you noticing a pattern here? Verse 20, Vayas, and he made. The first word in verse 8 was Vayasu, and they made. Why should that be different? And we will discuss that tomorrow, God willing. So we discussed this morning the Orach Chaim about the unique talent of teaching. We discussed the Kli Yakar comparing Moshe telling the people to stop bringing donations to God, telling the world to stop expanding. We discussed the Ramban regarding what we learned from the fact that the donations were above what was normal, and that there was an announcement made that people should stop bringing the donations. And we discussed this Sforno regarding the contrast between the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash in terms of the donations have to be capped.